Gentlemen, thank you all so much. And this is our closing session of the day. It should be, I would say, one of the most important, but they will hear it and they will come in. I know they will. So really, when we look at what's going on in the region here and we look at, citywide efficiency and how this operates, let's take a look at Saudi Arabia, because Saudi is in the news for a lot of reasons, and tremendous growth in Saudi. Saudi maybe not as big a budget as you might have had a few years ago, but again, in the renewable space, there is tremendous commitment. There's a lot happening, but maybe some of the plans that we'd like to see, and we can hear from some of the other colleagues in terms of what's going on. So bring us up to date with what's happening, particularly in the cities in Saudi in terms of energy efficiency. Dr. Naif.
Yes, thank you for the organizer for inviting me to share really our experience in energy efficiency, which is really, thank God that we are really experiencing a good success in this. It won't be just a citywide, but it will be kingdom-wide, actually. That's what we are doing. The center was established in 2010 and started operation in 2011, where it is really work as a collective. It's been charged to energy efficiency in the demand side, and it is joining hands with all the players in the energy sector, where we have really a high-level committee that's running, overseeing the activity of the center, represented from 9 ministries and 8 other government organizations, in addition to SABIC and Saudi Aramco and Saudi Electricity Company, as well as we have representation from the private sector. So far, why we are looking into energy efficiency, we see that the local consumption of energy in Saudi Arabia is on the rising trend, where we see our energy intensity is continuously rising, which indicate a lot of waste, actually, whether it's in the consumption of electricity or in a consumption of other sources of energy, whether it's gasoline or in the transportation sector or in the industry. That's really showed the importance of having such collective effort that has to be tackling the energy efficiency. So far, actually, if I can share with you that we have done a lot, actually. We work as one national team. We have so far, we started 2011, we started developing our policy in 2012, and so far we have addressed 70 plus, actually, initiative. That's already, most of it, actually, is in the execution phase. I could share with you some of it. For example, on the air conditioning, on the residential sector, we have now our standard for small air conditioner is at the international level of the energy efficiency ratio. We have worked also on developing standard for insulation material, and we have also developed a program to make sure that any new building is built with thermal insulation, and if it's not, then they will not have any electricity connection. We have also updated the standard for other home appliances like the washing machine, refrigerators. In the transportation sector and in the lighting also, we had already issued the standard. Last year we issued it for the residential lighting, and it's coming soon for the commercial and even street lighting. For the transportation sector, we have issued our fuel economy label. Since this January, beginning of January, we are implementing our economy standard, both for new cars and for used car. We are using the model of a CAFE standard for the new cars. For used car, we are using a MAPS, minimum performance economy standard. We have also issued our standard label for the tires, for rolling resistance and wet grip. Other activities been also under study, and we will soon get it out on the heavy-duty vehicles, as well as also looking into some program for the to take out some of the old cars. We have about 12 million cars on the Saudi Arabia roads. About 20% of it is 20 years and older, actually. So we have to take some of these inefficient cars. Yes.
It'd be like Singapore, where you almost have to have a
Yes.
new car, and the tax is going to be so high that people will give up. They'll get a bicycle or something, will they?
Yeah, this is also will be supported by the new public transport. With public
Cleaner fuel.
yes.
Okay, we'll come back to the transportation, because this is very, very vital, of course, within any urban environment, and you look at the ongoing urbanization. Stéphane Legentil, when you're looking at the Etihad Energy Services already here in the UAE, this has been established. This is a body now that is working. Your body part is working, but you don't have a fully committed organization that's looking after this yet, do you? Oh, in your center, okay.
our center, yes.
But I think some of the work that Stéphane is doing in terms of the retrofit in the buildings, it'll be something interesting perhaps that you'll like to hear too. So I can understand new regulations for new buildings. This is very straightforward and people should adhere to them. But how do you come into a city that, I mean, even when you look at Dubai, that, suddenly in the last few years, has just been sprawling and emerging, and suddenly you've got all these older buildings that, maybe some of them need to be pulled down. It might be easier than refit them, but what's the choice? And what are you doing in Dubai and the region here?
Yeah, so that's a good question, and there is a choice when we do a project. Should we invest so much into the building to make it more efficient, or should we just dismantle it? And that's where there is a fine line that I have to find, because that's the reaction of some of my clients when I say, well, we should invest into this, and say, well, maybe I should just rebuild the the buildings. So, but I think no, the real thing is what we're doing. So Etihad was established in 2013 as one of the organizations to focus on the building retrofits in Dubai. So we are a government-owned entity. We belong to the utility, DIWA. And our only focus is on making sure that the buildings become more efficient. There was a study done in Dubai showing that out of the 120,000 buildings, around 30,000 of them are suitable for retrofits. And we've put in place a lot of regulations, tools to create that market and to stimulate that market. The way we are working is that Etihad is there as a facilitator in the market. We are convincing the building owners that there is an opportunity for them to retrofit their buildings. When we do that, we make an assessment how far we can go into the retrofit, so that the investment...
Because every building, I mean, some are going to be more difficult than others, aren't they?
Some will be more difficult. Some, there will be no potential. Some, there will be a huge potential. And you also need to define how far you want to go, because the more you want to retrofit, the more savings you want to generate, the more costly it becomes. And therefore, the questions becomes, should I do it? Because if it's very costly, maybe let's redo the building. But we've been working on...
Have you had some success in actually doing some buildings?
Yes, so we started initially being a subsidiary of DIWA. We started with the buildings of DIWA. So those, we did 2 projects with them. Those projects are, one of them is finished. So now the retrofit has been done. We're in the guarantee phase. This is a lighting project that we've been doing, and we're saving 68% of electricity on the lighting, so that's significant. That's the guarantee from the way we work, is that we are working with the private sector. So I'm organizing projects, tender them on the market, and then we have companies that are participating. So we call those companies ESCOs, Energy Services Companies. And the ESCO that is doing this project has guaranteed 68%, but as we are finished the project, we see that we will be more in the range of 70. So it's a very good first project that we've been doing. Second one is the retrofit of DIWA building. It's going on.
Where, sorry?
The DIWA buildings,
oh, yes,
in general,
yes,
the old buildings of DIWA, including their headquarters. Recently, we've signed a fairly large project, well, in fact, that's the largest project in the region, which is the retrofit of the Jebel Ali Free Zone, so JAVZA, in the south of Dubai, where we're going to improve 157 buildings, mostly staff accommodation. And there, the JAVZA is going to save around 31% on their electricity and water bill. So that's significant. And it's those buildings are mostly staff accommodation, so there is a lot of savings that are done on water. Where if you look at office buildings, savings will be more on electricity because office buildings don't use a lot of water. But as soon as you go into residential, then a lot of savings are also in water. Right. And we're working on a certain number of other projects. So really my only focus is to make sure that we have a number of projects going on, because I have clear targets that were set to me in terms of kilowatt-hour savings, in terms of gallons of water savings, and I have to reach those targets. So that's what we're doing, and at the moment we focus on mostly the government entities or the semi-government entities like the free zones in Dubai. We've also signed an agreement with the Ministry of Energy was in September, I think, last year, where we are going to focus on the federal buildings of the UAE. There are 4,000 buildings, federal buildings, which are consuming a lot of energy.
So you're going to be busy for a while, Stefan, I think.
Yes.
Marwan, if I can come to you, when we look at the Dubai Science Park and look at, N Park and some of the environment, the Dubai Biotech and that, the establishment of the free zones here and, something like the Dubai Science Park, again, very energy efficient, a new way of living. I mean, I remember the first time when I moved here and I did a story for CNBC when they set up Knowledge Village, right. And they also had Media City. And it was a bizarre concept in Europe. And we thought, why on earth would all of the media players want to come to one place?
Right.
And Dubai and this region really was one of the few places who started doing that. And now they're beginning to do a similar thing, I think, in Europe.
Correct.
But how important is that in terms of, with the growth of urbanization, bringing all of those key players together? What efficiencies are there?
I think it's very important. I mean, we have merged last year Energy and Environment Park and the Biotech Park, and we have called it now the Dubai Science Park. Yeah. So it's not an acquisition, it's really both companies coming under one umbrella. And we still target the same industry sectors, which is health sciences, material sciences, and energy and environment sciences. I think it's really key for the private sector to be involved in these sort of big plans that Dubai has for 2030 and 2050. At the end of the day, I think the execution of those plans is really up to the collaboration between the private and the public sector. And this is why free zones are very important. It's not only about providing space or facilities, it's also about really having discussions. So for example, we have joined something called the Green Economy Partnership, along with DIWA, RTA, yes. Dubai Municipality, Ittihad as well. And we have quarterly meetings where we bring everyone on the same table and we invite the private sector to have these discussions. And a lot of it sparks new ideas or new projects. And I think this is very important to continue doing.
And we are seeing, more focus on this and the growth, because it does work.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we have now close to 300 companies, and we started just in 2005 with an idea, and things have really picked up from that. So, and there is, whenever you create a community of similar kinds of companies, you always, people can work together, can mingle together. So I think, replicating the Media City story is definitely doable.
And it's almost creating mini cities in one way, because some of these now are having a dual work and live.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we have looked at, the really successful cities And we've realized that it's not only office blocks, it's really, the residential component, the school component, the hotels, and that's really what works. And it also, reduces carbon emission at the end of the day. So in our master plan, we have not only offices and laboratories, but also residential communities, hotels, school as well. So it's a city within a city, and I think speaking to my colleagues in Dubai municipality, they say that we sometimes like to build big blocks of offices, but we forget to put residential around them, and then we have traffic.
Yes.
So planning is also important, and the concept of having work and residential close to each other does really help.
Now, Abu Bakr, I haven't lost you. I'll be with you in a minute, but I'm going to stay with Japan. I know you're miles away from me down there. Mr. Toyota, let's talk about just the buildings at the moment. I will come on to transportation because they're all intertwined and we can't ignore one without the other. But we look at, again, a huge urban city like Tokyo. This is an area where people tend to work and live. This is a city that possibly has maybe got some of that right already. But how can you manage, particularly with the energy efficiency and something like retrofitting? How do you retrofit a city like Tokyo if you want to make the buildings energy efficient? And where do you build more buildings?
Well, thank you for a great question. I think, first of all, in general term, urbanization would increase energy demand unless you improves your energy efficiency. And particularly in such a big city as Tokyo, we have to think about transportation energy efficiency. If you look at Jakarta, if you look at Beijing, if you look at Bangkok, always traffic jam is there. But in Japan, we do not have that much traffic jam because almost 50% of transportation in Tokyo is conducted by railways. Perhaps I look at the number in Beijing, maybe only 20%. Transportation.
Only 10%?
Yeah, well,
That's very surprising.
clearly they use bus as well.
Yes, okay.
But bus doesn't solve the congestion problem. And I was a little bit surprised to look at the number of Jakarta. Jakarta only 2% for railways and trains, and maybe 30% is bus, and in addition to that, 30% to 40% by bicycle or motorbike. And so I think, first of all, in such a big city as Tokyo or Beijing or Jakarta, Bangkok, you need to have very efficient mass transportation. Otherwise, you cannot improve your energy efficiency. But that not is the end of the story. I think in addition to that, we have to improve our energy efficiency in buildings. And also, we can introduce more energy efficient vehicles and electric appliances. In addition to that, we could have apartment rather than a cottage, and by doing that, we could improve our energy efficiency. But as far as Tokyo is concerned, they have 20% energy efficiency target over the next 20 years.
The next 20 years, that's not much.
No, I'm sorry, 10 years.
Okay,
Yeah,
right. It's a little better.
25% CO2 reduction by over the next 10 years. And so I think the important thing is that big city like Tokyo need to have a target in terms of energy efficiency, and probably you need have to have some regulation and in order to encourage people to make the best efforts, provide incentives. By incentive, I mean tax incentive or subsidy. By doing that, people are happy to make the efforts because payback period or return back period can be shortened. And so it makes sense. And so we have to target, we have to regulation, and we have to provide incentive. That's what we are trying to do.
That's the way to do it. Okay, well, we'll talk more about that, and I do want to talk a bit more about transportation. Professor Abubakar, now you are heading up the Sustainable Energy Research Group in the University of Southampton. You know more about sustainable energy than many people here, I would think, and you've been doing this for more than 25 years, and you've worked indeed around the world too, so you're not just confined to that beautiful city where you get to live and that lovely university. I can hardly see him there, but I'm just... so just tell us in terms of, you know, that need for the work that you've done over the years and the research that you've done, where are you finding are the most gains when it comes to energy efficiency, and who's really winning on this? What cities are doing it right?
Okay, thanks very much for the question. I also thank the audience. I don't know whether you can hear me clearly, because I am getting a lot of echo here. I couldn't really hear much of my colleagues talking.
Yeah, it's so, never great across the
maybe
panel
the
for
guys
some
in the
reason.
back may
but I
sort
think
it out.
it's okay down there with you.
So to answer your question, I think cities are the dynamo of economic growth, whether they are regional or national activities within those cities. So they are the major consumers of energy. And what we need to have is a really linked policy in relation to energy efficiency, whether it is related to industry, whether it's related to services, mobility, or in terms of buildings. And our work with the city is really related to perhaps the last one, which is buildings and how you reduce consumption in buildings. At the city level, so we are looking at 4 cities in the UK: Southampton, Birmingham, Leicester, and also Portsmouth. So Southampton is the first case study that we're looking at. And what we have done is we have developed a geographical information system of all the buildings that are in Southampton. And from that, we have assessed in software what will be the effect of various interventions within those buildings. For example, if you replace a single glaze by double glaze windows, or if you replace the insulation for the roof or the walls and things like that, if you have actually included combined heat and power and so forth, if you install PV on those buildings and so forth. So you get to a level where you can understand what slice of energy efficiency you can deliver at the whole city. And our analysis indicates that it will be about 15% of emissions reduction if you go through the policy requirement, the current policy requirement that are within the UK, which is a grade 4 or a grade 5 in sustainable homes rating. However, we have a real difficult political issue in the UK, in that we used to have a coalition government who were very pro-energy efficiency and also very pro-renewables. The government in last May changed, and quite a lot of the regulations that were in place at the time are now being taken away. For example, we had a target by 2019, all domestic buildings should be all new domestic buildings should be zero carbon. Okay,
Wow.
That target
and then
was
the
taken
whole
out.
of UK by 2019?
But by 2019, all new buildings should be zero carbon.
Across the UK, so they've got 3 years to
No,
get that.
it's been taken out by the current government,
Okay.
right? And this is really what's uncertainty coming in relation to what a local authority or perhaps a municipality wanted to do, and businesses, what they want to do. If there is no certainty in the policy, then you have a major problem. Another example I can give you is there is an energy obligation scheme that we used to have where the utility will supply you power or gas or whatever for heating your house. They have an obligation to reduce their emissions by so many % every year. And that obligation can only be fulfilled by having energy efficiency measures, right? And that scheme, I remember we were working around 6,250 homes to have district heating and to have refurbishment of those homes. And these are the poor of the poor in the city. And the price of carbon at the time was £145 per ton. So you do your sums, it's actually a doable scheme. And then we had a real problem that in the press, the utilities being basically taken down, saying that they are overcharging, and there was some overcharging. They have different price levels. People don't understand it, especially pensioners and things like that, and they are overcharged for it. And the press got the utilities down, and the government said, we'll scrap this policy, and the price of carbon went down to £35 per ton. So we have to shelve that scheme in relation to energy efficiency. So energy efficiency is very important, but they are politically sensitive, and you need to have the regulations in place to give certainty to do projects and as well achieve the targets.
Stefan, when we look at this region, I mean, is it just because there is that government commitment there and this is going to happen and you will make sure it's happening? I mean, where can that certainty be built in here in the region?
In the Middle East?
No, I'm asking Stefan now for what you're talking about, the systems that have been put in place and then, didn't work and that lack of certainty there, or, it can be maneuvered not to work. How can you ensure that it begins to work here?
No, I think this is the strength that we have here in the UAE, is that on the government level it's very stable, and when things are being decided, it's just put into action, and there is no risk that suddenly there is an election and then the government changes and then
Yes.
Things are being questioned. So I think here the government is very, very thorough thinking, visionary, and then it's just after that a matter of putting the plans into action, and there is no risk that things are going to change. So this is very, very good for the businesses, very good also for companies like mine, where we have to do things, and if things were changing all the time, it would be very difficult. We are very, very supported in that sense by the government currently.
Dr. Naif, in terms of Saudi Energy Efficiency Center, again, this is, going to be measurable. I mean, but right now, are you getting people on board that are actually taking action and they are looking at the policy, the regulations, and saying we're going to adhere to that? Or is this a bit of a struggle now? And particularly, maybe in the outskirts of the city where you're looking at bigger industry as well.
Okay, how we do it in Saudi Arabia, actually, from the establishment of the center, actually, we establish it to make sure that we ensure the consensus building on any regulation that we issue, make sure that we are getting the buy-in from all the party, which is whether it is a government agency or even the private sector. We're trying to make sure that any regulation will come out, it will be adopted, and it will be welcomed. But also, we have to have a serious enforcement, and I can share with you some of output or the outcome of our serious enforcement. But we are supporting this also with a good, robust awareness campaign. When we are issuing a regulation, we actually put a specific campaign to that regulation to also inform the public that this is how they benefit from these regulations. And we, as I mentioned, we do really serious enforcement. Because we have everybody on board, so we do the enforcement as a national level. So we have committees that will be ensuring that if we issue a regulation, it's being enforced, whether at the custom, for example, on the border, or it is in the market, we'll have market surveillance, or either on the manufacturing lines. For example, when we implemented our first stage of the small air conditioning, we stopped 1 million units of air conditioning that were meeting the standards. And these were stopped from being sold in the market. Some of them were confiscated, some of them were refabbed, some of them were re-exported, and some of them were dismantled.
So the penalty is there if you bring
Penalty
in
is there.
equipment.
Yes,
Yeah. Okay.
and we are continuing on this. For example, this is what we did when we implemented the first phase. But also in 2015, we did the same thing. We visited about 7 factories, and we closed one of them. We have visited 2,600 stores. And we make sure that the unit, I mean, that we have ensured that through the market surveillance, we have seized about 8,689 units that was seized and taken because we are not, we do the same for the others as well. When we issued our labels, we make sure that the label is being used on the car, and also the label should be authentic and also reflect the fuel economy of the car. And we, for example, for the fuel economy, when we issued our label, we have visited 1,056 showrooms, and we found that about 1,000, there were 1,000, cars, on 1,000 cars, the label was not, played with it, or forged or something. Okay, and the same happened also in 2015, when we also visited
You had a few forged labels.
Yeah.
So they're taking you serious,
yeah.
but they're pretending. It's an old Volkswagen story, is it?
Some they don't like. I mean, for high luxury cars,
yes.
They do want to put that the fuel economy is bad.
Yes.
So that's actually what happened. One of the famous luxury car, they didn't accept it that they would have a green.
Yes,
they put a green, not a red bar on the.
It doesn't really have that macho appeal, it doesn't speed as well.
Yes. The enforcement also goes to as well as to the design houses for the building, for new buildings. When we are enforcing the thermal insulation, we have closed a number of.
Wow, okay.
Yes.
So watch out. Dr. Naif is in the house, if we see him coming down the road.
It's not me, it's everybody, there.
I know, your team. But I think that's very encouraging to hear that is actually happening.
Yes, it is.
And it is. I have a few questions here, one of them being, cooling is the biggest energy consumer. Marwan, I don't know if you can talk about this, and I'm not sure within the science park, are you doing district cooling for that area or how it is, but district cooling been used to enhance efficiency in some areas. The plants use conventional chillers and not the thermal ones, which could allow for additional savings. And what are the regulation coming to change this, or will there?
Right. In the developments that we do, we do use district cooling. We work with a company called Empower,
yes,
which DIWA also owns shares in it, we sort of force people to use it, because if you want to build a new development, then that's the only option for district cooling. And in fact, we link it to the utility provider. So when you go and apply for your electricity load, you will need to make sure that you're also connected through district cooling. We did see some resistance initially from people, but then they realized that the power that they have been allocated, they can actually use it for something else. So that rather than a lot of their allocated power goes for air conditioning, that gets reduced dramatically, and hence they just pay for the district cooling. We have seen on the long term, I think it makes sense if it's a payback that is more than 5 years, but if in the short term it could be a little bit higher, but then in the long run it does definitely save. So we use it in all the developments, even private investors, right. And I think it is a good way of saving energy for sure. As we all know that air conditioning accounts for majority of the energy that is consumed here in this part of the world. So
especially
it is
here,
definitely
for several
something to watch. On a personal level, I have recently installed fans in the bedroom, something that we used to do 20 years ago, and people are just using central AC. Yeah. But we realized that there is at least 2 months of the year where you don't really need AC, and you can get away with fans. And that has shown massive savings in my bill as well.
Yeah, we are a bit spoiled this time of year. It's very nice. You don't have to put the AC on. And in Southampton, you probably wouldn't need the AC too often with the weather we're having there these days. So you don't have the district cooling issue.
We have, as it happens, we have a district cooling and also a district heating in Southampton.
The heating, yes.
We had the only geothermal district heating in the UK, actually, which is a well which is about 1.6 kilometers down in the ground, and it supplies heat to the rest of the city. At the same time, the company who actually is operating this, they are supplying cooling as well to the buildings, because these new buildings now, they don't have much of a thermal mass, and they have windows and so forth. So you need to cool them down, in spite of the fact that it's not a harsh climate as we have here.
Yeah,
So-
and again, I suppose it's almost just the opposite of here. You need the district heating, and again,
Yeah.
in terms of the building standards, the double glazing, all of that protects the heat.
Yeah.
But I thought the standards now in the UK, and particularly if you're selling a house, that it is, like if I'm selling a house there, it's my responsibility to get an energy audit on the house, and that has to be delivered before I can sell that. That's still in
Yes,
effect, is it?
So if you want to sell your house in the UK, there is called an Energy Policy Certificate, an APC certificate, which is done by a qualified auditor or an assessor. That gives an indication of the status of the building, and it gives an indication of what energy efficiency measures could be done to improve it, so that the next tenant could actually try and do and think about that. Or if even you fail to sell your house, you could do some improvement in that. So these are the certificates that we actually utilized in our analysis to validate our results for all the buildings in
And
Southampton.
this is mandatory now in the UK,
It
is
is
it, for the sale of a
mandatory,
house?
so you cannot sell the house without certificate.
So you can stay and live in your energy inefficient house if you want,
Yes.
but try and put it on the market, and
Yes,
it
and
might-
actually
it might be difficult.
It's a major, enabler to people to do something about energy efficiency. There's something else I was going to say, actually, related to cooling. One of the buildings in our university is by the sea. It's by campus, by the seaside, by the harbor. And all the cooling we get is from the sea.
Oh, how nice,
And
yes.
I don't know whether you know London, the Shell building in London, which is next to the London Eye, opposite to the Parliament, they had cooling from the River Thames for 45 years. Okay?
didn't know
so
that.
water cooling is extremely interesting, especially if your region is surrounded by water. Really interesting.
Right,
And
I
I'll
don't know.
urge my colleagues in UAE and Saudi Arabia to think about that.
Yeah, Marwan, you're nodding your head there, so this is
It's
something
something we
you're
should definitely try here. I mean, Dubai and also Abu Dhabi is a coastal city, so
Yes.
and we have plenty of water. But does the water need to be at a certain temperature?
It's got a heat exchanger, so it's got to go to a certain depth.
Okay.
So you need to have a different temperatures, about 10 degrees in between the return and so forth. You may use it as just background cooling, so you shave off quite a lot of the energy used for the air conditioning. So it reduces from 26 perhaps to 24, and then you do the rest of it by air conditioning.
Yeah.
For you, of course, because your temperature is better. Yeah.
Yeah,
Dr. Naif, you're...
One of the,
Oh, wait.
just as a comment, one of the downfalls of district cooling is that because it cools the air, so in the current months, in the last 2 months, our offices have been really freezing.
Yes.
And this is because the air outside is actually less than the desired temperature. So even though the air is not cool, it's just, it goes through the system. So we get 19 degrees temperature, which is
Yeah, I
very
have
cold.
noticed that in a few places.
So,
I'm wondering if it's way too
so
cold.
maybe the water is actually a better option.
Right. Mr. Toyota, yes, please.
I think district heating is very interesting, but we studied how effective it could be in Japan. In northern part of Japan, yes, it works, but the rest, unfortunately, it is not functioning. And we made a study, and so it depends on the weather. I think probably in hot areas, it might not work quite well. But now I think people are quite interested in district energy management rather than district heating. I think by using information technology, maybe you are trying to do that in Dubai. I think we have, say, 1,000 houses, 1,000 buildings, and somehow we could control energy by using information technology, and we could introduce the demand restraint again by using information technology. So it's not necessarily district heating or district cooling, but district management of energy. I think that may work for any country.
Yes. Now, I have a question here, and I'd like to move on. I'm wary of the time, about already established mass transportation. Maybe, Mr. Yoda, I'll stay with you for a moment on this. You in Japan have succeeded in getting people onto the trains. If you haven't been around Dubai or Abu Dhabi for a while, you realize they're not on the trains. There's one person in every car, and every car is more beautiful and bigger than the next one. And that will probably continue for a while. And there's some people I know who, when I tell them about the metro, they look at me and go, "You've been on the metro?" So I tell them they should try it even for a tourism thing. But so part of it is probably a bit of a mindset, but how, again, people are traveling, as you say, by train. It's really, it's a lifestyle in Tokyo, really. I mean, is it?
Yeah.
But do you, encourage, so to speak, the use of a car? I mean, is it worth my while if I live in Japan to have a car, or is it an inconvenience?
But I think,
Or in the city?
At least on weekdays, if you use trains, that's much more
You do have good
efficient.
trains in Japan,
Yes.
though. That's
but
the other thing as well.
over the weekend, clearly, many people use their own automobile. But on weekdays, everybody knows if you try to use your car, traffic jam is coming up, and that would disturb your efficient movement. And so almost 50% of people try to use trains rather than automobile. And only less than 20% can utilize automobile. Mostly transporting luggages and et cetera, et cetera. So commuting, I think, as you said, lifestyle, it's much wiser for us to use train or metro rather than using automobile. So I think it depends on the country, it depends on the size of the city, but if you have a big population in a city like Beijing, Bangkok, even Malaysia, and Jakarta, I think it's much more efficient for you to have mass transportation. Even bus is not necessarily efficient, but usually in Japan, we try to have a bus lane, a particular lane only for bus. And then
Yes.
bus can move very quickly, but then that would disturb other automobile. And so still the most favorite transportation for commuting is trains or metros.
Also, Abu Bakr, when you're looking at just in the UK model too, I mean, public transportation is very widespread, but in a city like Southampton, how widespread is it there? And again, you have a lot of suburbs there, so still a lot of car use. But, and there's not a metro in Southampton yet, is there? It's too small.
No, there's no metro in Southampton, and in fact, the public transport in Southampton failed miserably.
Oh no.
We have two universities in Southampton, 42,000 students.
Yes.
That's 40% of actually 20% of the city's population. So the two universities got together and they said, we'd like to have our own bus system, which is run by LPG. And they mapped, the transportation group in our university mapped where the residents are. So the best bus operated in the city is operated by the university.
Oh, that is very funny.
And they are making money out of it. So the city now realized what they have been missing, and now they're planning for a rapid transport system to connect the various regions of the city.
And
Really
what will
quick.
they do? Maybe like trams or more buses? I mean, because they can't dig an
more
underground.
like buses with certain lanes in the main roads to allow them to do connectivity.
Okay, I thought you were going to give us a wonderful success story that we could replicate here. So given that it failed miserably in a city like Southampton, what are the hopes here in the region? Marwan, we see the tram in Dubai is packed at all times. Again, it does tend to be packed by a lot of people coming and going to work who might not have a car anyway and who might have before the tram depended on irregular buses and car sharing and all of that. But what can be done to get people off the roads in a city like Dubai? Or is it the growth of your business parks that's going to maybe have me living nearby or something like that?
I think, I mean, the metros, I know I have some friends who have taken it and they're really
Oh,
packed.
no, you're admitting you haven't been on the metro.
No, I have
Aye,
been.
aye,
I have been, but I don't use it to go to work
Yes.
because our science park is still not connected to
Yes.
the metro, but it is planned to be. I think it's the purple line. So hopefully soon. So RTA is definitely building more and more lines, which is very encouraging. But I think it really has to do with the mindset. You know, if you go to cities like London, New York, Munich, you will see that you could literally go anywhere you want. And, you know, with a little bit of walking, it's manageable. At the science park, and also not only at our park, at the TCOM level, including Media City, Internet City, and Knowledge Village, we're actually doing bicycle tracks. It is part of the enhancement of the site, which is ongoing now. So we want to encourage more and more bicycle tracks. So when I asked our CEO, I said, you know, why do we want to do this? You know, people will not use it during the summer. So he said, well, we're going to have showers in, you know, some of the buildings, so people can take a shower if they want to. So, and it's really true. I mean, if you look at Singapore, for example, they do have, you know, harsh humidity as well. If you look at Sweden, they have extreme cold. So I think the heat is just an excuse, and we can, you know, change our mindset and change our behavior and live a healthy life and a cleaner, greener life as well.
Let's see, how about in Saudi? Do you think they're ready for it?
Yes, actually, we have major projects going on the for public
Transportation,
transportation, yeah, for metro and for underground, actually. For Riyadh, already started for 2 years now, and we expect it to be finished within 5 years, inshallah. And similar will happen to other major city like Jeddah, which is, I think, under the design, or maybe the design finished. I think you have to establish, and Mecca as well.
Yeah.
I think you have the need, for example, considering Riyadh, the traffic is really bad in Riyadh. And I know some of my colleagues, if they want to travel from the south to the north, they may take 1 hour and a half and 1 hour 45 minutes to reach the work if they travel at certain time. And they are looking actually forward for having some mean of public transport. So if you have a reliable, dependable, and good service, I'm sure that everybody will take. In Riyadh, we will have a good network through underground, above the ground, and as well as also different kind of buses. So once it's complete, I think this is the expectation, is to have it really, but you have also to force people to use it. You cannot leave them just like that. So
Yeah, I
you have
don't know,
to
I mean, come
increase-
on. You're not going to be able to
Yeah.
force people to get
No,
on the...
you have to increase the cost of
yes.
using the car.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
increase
no,
the
and I
cost
mean,
for
I
you.
was recently in
Yeah.
Singapore, and literally my friends there were just crying about using their car. And, you know, the fact they have to upgrade it, they can only have the latest car because it has the latest spec, you know, and it's fuel efficient, and it's, you know, it's every second place they go, there's a tax on it, and you can bring it to one area and not to the other. So, yeah, well, now I'm afraid we're coming close to the end of this. I have one question that I want to come back to you, Stefan, if I may, too, because now it's been sent back to me on the use of district cooling and the thermal chillers here. What is the chances here of actually transferring some of the chillers here, the electric chillers in district cooling, into maybe thermal chillers? Is that something they're looking at? And even, I think, Marwan, you're aware that maybe with what Empower is doing, is there plans in the way to actually be more efficient?
You mean to have district cooling more efficient?
Yeah, the removal of electric chillers. This is specifically what a colleague here is talking about. To actually have use of thermal chillers and removal of wasteful electric chillers.
Okay, yeah, because right now they're using electric
Electric, yes.
chillers. So the idea is to use absorption chillers.
Yeah.
We made a study for one of our clients that had that has a big space. The thing is, you can do that, but it requires a lot of space because you need a lot of heat to have a certain volume of cooling. So I think it's possible in certain ways, in certain places where you have a lot of space, where you can have solar panels that would then generate enough heat to make those chillers working. But it's when you see where district cooling is usually put, where you see those district cooling plants, they're usually close to a lot of buildings, and there's
Yes.
not a lot of space to have. So I don't know. It's maybe in a new development. It's something that you can imagine in current places where those plants are installed. I think it's going to be quite difficult. Plus, you also have to. I think.
But the suggestion is out there. They're looking at it. They're not turning a blind eye to it.
I think I don't know if they're looking at it in details. From our side as Etihad, we looked at it for one of our clients. The feasibility was difficult. So
Yes.
I don't know. It's a little bit challenging on the technical side, I think. If you need low tonnage of cooling, I think it's feasible.
Right.
District cooling plants those are huge plants. So you need a lot of, would require a lot of heating.
Yes.
Yeah.
Marwan, sorry, you want to come here?
The ways around that would be one of the companies in our park is basically offering glass panels that could actually act like solar panels.
Okay.
It's a see-through glass that you could use as building cladding. It's a very new technology, and that could maybe give you enough electricity to generate district cooling. Because the problem with the towers are, you don't have much space on the roof. Unless, like Stefan said, you have a lot of empty land, which is probably not the case in a commercial district, then it becomes very difficult for you to have enough space to generate power.
So maybe there's an opportunity to do there. Let me just wrap up this. Professor Abu Bakr, just looking at what you think needs to be done that would really, push the agenda on energy efficiency. As you said, some of that perhaps certainty that has to be in the market, particularly when it comes to people investment in energy efficiency, because they're not going to do it if they feel that it can be turned around. What would you think is the most immediate thing you need to do? Professor Abu Bakr first.
I think it's interesting. 10 years ago, I suggested to one of the utilities who was supplying electricity to go and supply environmental services to their customers. That includes heat, that includes water, and so forth. And they told me, go away, show me the doors, they go away. And now they're selling gas as well as electricity and boilers and so forth. In my view, the future should be about utilities selling me environmental services. Here's my house, look after it, look after its facade, make it much more efficient, sell me a level of comfort, whether it's in the summer or in the winter, allow me to sell if I'm producing electricity at the right level that I could sell to gain maximum benefit if my house is producing solar PV. If my house is also integrated with information technology, they can also connect to my appliances, take away my appliances away, and approach the grid to reduce the load on the grid. So this is the future that we should think about. This is really what we need to have. Utilities think a different business process to sell and environmental services to allow us to take all this effort from us as the consumers and be provided by somebody who's going to be supporting it.
Mr. Toyoda, just very quickly, what would you think that would really help efficiency, and particularly in the big cities as well? How can we make life better? I'm moving on now. Thank you for yours, Abu Bakr. For you, Mr. Toyoda.
Home management, you mean?
In the cities, what would you like to see that could actually increase efficiency?
Well, I think now it's time for us to think about smart community type. We have, in Japan, we have 4 demonstration projects, and we found very good performance. For instance, in terms of energy efficiency, energy consumption reduction, we could achieve about 70%, and CO2 reduction, 29%, and by using demand restraint, we could cut the peak by 20%. And so again, when we say smart community, it's more usage of information technology. And by doing that, I think now it's a small city, but it can be utilized even in such a large city as Tokyo.
Yes.
And so information technology would definitely change the landscape of energy efficiency.
Thank you so much. Stefan, what have you got in the works in the next while for us, or what would you like to have in the works that would make your job easier and make the energy efficiency better in the city?
Well, for me, if maybe a lot of people will hate me, but if prices of electricity go up, I will have more business to do. So, no, but I'm very hopeful because I see, with what's happening currently in the market, we see in all of the countries around that they are revisiting the prices for electricity and water, and this is a very good sign for energy efficiency because if energy is cheap, people will say, why should I do something?
Exactly, yes.
Now that prices are going up, people are thinking about it, and that's very, very strong signal that we're sending to the market.
So when you gently sort of hit them in the pockets, they begin to maybe think about it a little bit. Marwan, just there what Mr. Toyota was talking about too in terms of smart communities, and you're looking at maybe like the science park or any of the free zones that are now really incorporating the live, work, play model.
Right.
How important is that again can reduce energy efficiency?
It's very important because you don't want people to be stuck in traffic, and you don't want people to spend hours dropping the kids and then coming back to work. You want to really create a community. But
so
I
it's
think,
sort of going back to old-fashioned basics, as in it's almost like rebuilding the village.
Yeah, absolutely, I would say so, yes. What's also very important is the education and the mindset. I see we interact with universities a lot, and we try to bring along the students to work with companies because we want them to do research that is real research that can actually benefit the companies rather than doing very basic and abstract research. And also, we do engage with schools as well, because this mindset really starts at home rather than from the university. So it's really the mindset, I think, would be a key element. It's not only making savings, but also reducing the consumption is key as well.
Super. Okay, and I'm going to give you the closing word, Dr. Naif, just as the electricity bills have got more expensive in Saudi. So is this going to really help too in terms of, is that a good sign for, particularly for your work, it's making it a little easier?
Yes, for sure. Because when we established actually the center, the mandate of the center was not including any price reform. So we were working with one hand tied up, actually. And with the increase in the electricity, actually, it's not just only the electricity that was increased recently. All the fuel, all the energy product were increased. So this will help us a lot. And with the intention of the government to increase it more, I'm sure that it make people really use it wise, because I think that's the point. Because there's an opportunity to save. For example, district cooling. District cooling will save you a lot, but you have to force people to use it. You have to make probably district cooling zones. You have to make a regulation. We already went one step, and we have our regulator now to regulate district cooling. So you have to do a lot of things from the government side, but you have also to force people to use these technologies so they can reduce their bill and reduce the consumption.
Yeah, it is. It's about selling that win-win opportunity and that win-win proposition. Yes. Wonderful. Gentlemen, thank you all so much for your input. Really, really appreciate it. And to our dear audience, thank you for staying with us. That concludes all of our sessions for today, actually. So a very successful day one here at the World Future Energy Summit. And tomorrow then, we're back here at 9:30, just in the main hall, where they'll be looking at accelerating progress to a low carbon future and really looking at that energy transition. And again, talking to the key industry stakeholders just to see how that is working and how it's going to work. So from all of us here, thank you all so much. I hope you've had a good day, and we'll look forward to seeing you back tomorrow. I'll be back in the afternoon. I think I'm off to the Wiser conference with the ladies in the morning. So there's two conferences running parallel, so I'll probably meet myself en route, but I will be back in the afternoon. I'm doing the session on India tomorrow afternoon just to see, and tremendous work going on there, so we'll see. Once again, thank you all so much. Abu Bakr, sorry, closing word there?
Make a plug for our Future Cities Forum tomorrow. It starts, I think, at 10 o'clock in one of the rooms up at the higher level. I can't remember which one. but it's all about what we just talked about here in a bit more detail.
Yeah, and indeed,
Future and
we have to remember there are some great conferences running parallel.
Yes.
So we want your attention, but we do want you to go visit, the water conference as well. But the future cities will be
Forum, yeah.
fascinating, yes.
Yeah.
So any more announcements from our top panel here, and we'll let our audience go.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Once again, thank you all so much. Thank you so much.